Welcome back to Ambassador Alan Keyes here in just a moment. The website is loyaltoliberty.blogspot.com. We've got that up on the screen right now. If everybody will give it to you again before he leaves us. He's with us right to the end of the show. Another 25 minutes or so. Very honored to have him. I want to thank the sponsor of this hour of the show, Acola Blue. And it is an atmospheric water generator. It grabs 7.5 gallons out of the air a day and then sends it through reverse osmosis, a carbon filter, a bunch of other stuff. It's just a great unit. AcolaBlue.com, ECOLO Blue. Again, that's ECOLO Blue.com. Or give them a call at 800-691-6043. I have this in the office. I have this in my home. Just an amazing system. And doesn't come out of the tap. There's no fluoride, nothing in it. And then it goes through 7 filters. AcolaBlue.com or 800-691-6043, 800-691-6043. And I remember years ago listening to Mr. Keyes' radio show, so informative. Didn't do that anymore, but he's all over talk radio and TV, and we always enjoy having him. And he got arrested. You could be there pro-abortion. You just couldn't be against it. We're going to talk about that coming up in a few minutes. But sir, continue with the free speech issue. How can you put up signs with Bush as the Joker, Bush as a vampire? And I wasn't a fan of Bush tripling the size of government. Now, Obama's tripled it in 7-8 months, though, so he obviously even worse. I didn't know that was possible. How do these people, in fact, take the Village Voice. They put out Bush as the vampire, killing the Statue of Liberty, drinking its blood. The very artist came out and said, no, it's okay to show Bush bad, but because Obama is partially African, you are not allowed to. I mean, it's just they've got so much bravado. They're just so incredibly arrogant and just so over the top. They have no shame. Can you comment on what makes them tick and the attacks on your free speech?
Well, first of all, I think it's purely ideological. These people come from a point of view which basically says whatever we say goes. If we do it, then it's acceptable. If our opponents do it, then it's unacceptable. And you make them suffer for what they do in whatever way you can, because there is no such thing as a standard of truth. That's the most important thing to keep in mind when listening to their words and everything. The ordinary notion that you are trying to speak the truth and make sense and that you have respect for some standard of reasonableness and common sense and logic and factuality, none of it applies to them, as it did not apply to the people who edited Pravda in the old Soviet Union, as it never did not apply to the Goebbels propagandists under the Nazis. These people aren't about speaking the truth. They are simply about imposing their will by manipulating people's minds, by cutting off others so that they won't have access, won't be able to make arguments, and only allowing their voice and their understanding and their interpretation to be heard. And they are moving forward to implement that understanding, which, of course, is contrary to everything that Americans have professed to believe over the course of pretty much our entire history, since that notion of free and open and sometimes even raucous discussion and debate has been a hallmark of what our society is all about. But now
Ambassador,
that's being thrown away.
Ambassador, specifically, you've grown up, lived in Illinois. You know him as a state senator, as a U.S. senator. You're aware of his activities. So can you give us a snapshot of him? Because, I mean, specifically, here's the question, though. Even if you agree with his policies or disagree, I've never seen one this flagrantly or slickly lie. He makes Clinton look like a poor liar. He's a great actor. He should be in Hollywood, because he gets up and says, I will have no lobbyist anywhere. They will not write the laws. He hires more than anybody ever has. He says, I'll have total transparency. He keeps all of Cheney's secrecy and more, and then even makes it secret who comes to the White House where you even worked, taking it to a new level. So can you comment on knowing who he really is and how he seems to enjoy lying, and one of the few people I've seen who can lie and it looks like he's telling the truth?
Well, first of all, I don't want to pretend. One, I did not grow up in Illinois. You know I ran there, but I ran there on invitation.
Okay, well, I misunderstood that. But you're in Illinois, so how do you know him? How do you know him?
I learned about Barack Obama as I was engaging in the preparations and carrying out of that campaign effort. It is not a personal thing, and I never pretend that I have some, special personal slant on Barack Obama. I don't know about that. What I do know, I know from facts, from the positions he's taken, and from the facts that one can garner and that are now being shared more on the Internet and elsewhere, but that were hidden from the American people because the media claque of the Obama faction, the people who are kind of stupefied by their zealous support of Obama, did not share these facts with the American people. And so they were promoting a false understanding. So in a sense, I came at Barack Obama from an objective point of view, not from a point of view of any kind of special knowledge or animus of any kind. Like a lot of Americans, I didn't even know him from Adam.
All right, let me just stop you. I just figured that you were
just a pure little state senator that nobody had ever heard of until he started being pushed. And what's interesting is when you get to know more about his background, there were forces that were obviously helping to move him along. There are questions about who funded his education and all of these kinds of things. It looked like somebody had it in mind to prepare him for us, even though they weren't preparing us for him.
Okay, well, I apologize for my ignorance. I figured since you were running in Illinois and since you knew, I remember seeing you a year and a half, 2 years ago, speeches on YouTube, hearing you on the radio. You were so accurate about him, I was just guessing that you must have been in and around him in politics. But I guess you just did a crash course in research when you saw him being pushed and propelled by all these special interests.
Sometimes you can be accurate simply because you bring an objective state of mind to the facts and are willing to let them instruct you. And that, I guess, is all I can claim in terms of any understanding.
Okay, good. Break down then who he really is and what he would like to do if we weren't blocking him right now. What would Barack Obama be doing? Who is he?
Well, I think Barack Obama wants to, and at the very least, to impose a Chavez-style socialism on the United States, and to do so in a way that alters our Constitution. He has no respect for the Constitution, believes that the whole idea of limited government constrains the government from doing what the elitists think is good, and interferes with their freedom of action. And therefore, he wants to throw it out the window. They also seem to believe in what you might call a majority tyranny. So that if you win an election, you then have license to do whatever you want and no longer have to pay any attention to individual rights, to the rights of the minority groups of voters that don't support the things you're doing, all of that overthrown. The patterns are patterns that we see in contemporary life with somebody like Chavez, and they're patterns that we have seen in the past, as I've been saying, with these other socialist regimes. So none of it in that respect is surprising. And he just seems to be cut from an ideological cloth that came from his background, his association with people like Bill Ayers, his instruction in the approaches of folks like Saul Alinsky, his preference for Marxist-Leninist teachers and instructors who would, among other things, have shared with him that understanding of the world which devalues the individual and which lifts up the notion that individuals are no different than stones or rocks or any other material things and should be arranged and ordered by the will of the ruler so that their ideas and understanding of what is right for the society can be carried out. The whole moral understanding that puts an intrinsic value on individuals that started with our Declaration of Independence, he also rejects. And once you realize that you're dealing with somebody whose moral universe has rejected the fundamental premises of liberty that most Americans kind of take for granted, even when they can't fully articulate them, then you are a long way toward understanding what he's about. And what does he want to do? He wants to impose that kind of controlling socialist government on the United States. Does he think it's going to do us good? I imagine so, but I've got to tell you, when you see somebody so unwilling to look at the factual truth, and a lot of these leftists are and have been for the whole of my lifetime, you have to wonder whether they haven't completely surrendered to the fervor of their ideology in a way that makes their good intentions worthless because they're not willing to discipline those intentions with the discipline of common sense and reason and truth.
Amazing points. Dealing with lying, though, you worked in the White House with Ronald Reagan, and even if you disagreed with him or loved him or hated him, Reagan didn't do a lot of lying. I mean, he really was honest, and his policies were very transparent. In fact, there wasn't any lying, as much I can tell, which is universes away from Clinton. Bush certainly did some deceptive things, but Obama, I mean, you've been around presidents, you've been an ambassador, you've been in these campaigns. Is it safe to say, or would you disagree with my perspective, that he is the greatest liar I've ever seen, a new level of lying? I mean, I've read books about Hitler.
No.
I've read books about other people. It seems that Obama is really the slickest liar I've ever seen.
I'm not sure. You know, I think part of the reason he appears so right now is because the mass of the American people kind of aren't used to having to assume that the person they're dealing with is, how can I put it, not just lying, they are constructing a fiction.